Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Canada Files. I'm Jim Deeks. Our guest on this episode is one of the most successful and respected recording producers in the field of popular music, Daniel Lanois from Hamilton, Ontario. You may not be familiar with his name, but you will certainly know the music that Daniel has been instrumental in bringing to the music industry, and the artists that he's worked for and with over a career spanning nearly 50 years, like Bob Dylan, Peter Gabriel, Robbie Robertson, and U2, not to mention the Grammy Awards that have his name on them. Daniel Lanois, thanks so much for joining us on Canada Files.
Well, thank you, Jim, for having me on. I really appreciate your time.
Well, I want to start pretty much at the beginning. Most kids growing up in Canada in the 50s and 60s probably wanted to grow up to be Toronto Maple Leafs or Montreal Canadiens, but it looks like in your case, you wanted to be a musician. What got your interest going in music?
Well, I was never good at sports. And then I fell in love with music. There was a lot of music growing up. My grandfather was, as we say in Quebec, was violonneux. And my dad played a little bit as well. And my uncles on my mom's side sang old French-Canadian folk songs. And that resonated with me more than sports. And I decided to investigate the music. And it all started with a little penny whistle, and I went from there.
So your original thought was to grow up to be a musician, which I should clarify is still very much part of your career. You've done solo albums and you've been a singer as well. But I wonder what got you into the whole idea of producing other artists' work?
Well, when I say we, my brother Bob and I always had a little tape recorder around the house. The first one was a little flea market machine and everything was on board, the mic and the speakers and all. And I started recording my friends in the neighborhood. And I got pretty good at it and then kept getting better equipment. And it's just something that I came up with. And I always loved the recording medium. And I never thought I wanted to become a producer. It was the last thing on my mind. I was just having fun recording my friends. And then as I got better at it, more people started asking for my help and my advice. And being musical, I was able to get involved with the arrangements and the performances of the music. So I had a little bit of an advantage over more of a technical studio rat. I was a musical studio rat.
So let me get the kind of dumb question out of the way early. What exactly does a record producer do?
Record producers all do different things depending on their talent. And as I said a second ago, because I'm musical, I was able to get into it from the musical angle. So in my case, I get right in there with the tempo of the song, the key of the song, the arrangement. Maybe it would be better if we did this twice and minimize this, make the intro a little shorter, the outro longer, things like just what seemed like common sense to me is where I went in the recording studio. So it's always been very a musical approach for me. I know how to work all the equipment and everything, but what the advantage that I had was my musicality.
So how collaborative is the process? And I guess it depends on the band, but if you hear a song and you think, I think a tuba would go really well, or a cowbell would go really well in this part of the song, does your idea as the producer prevail, or do you talk it out, or I guess really who has the power to make the final decision?
Well, it's a process of psychology. Obviously, people come in with written songs, but there are times when songs get created in the studio. And this is where it gets pretty interesting. There might be a byproduct. Somebody will come up with a riff, or maybe there's a lyric line that hasn't gotten all the attention. And it's my job to spot these special moments that people may not have noticed on their own terms. And so, luckily, in the recording studio, unlike filmmaking, it's easy to change the course of the ship. You can say, let's leave that aside for now, and we'll go after this riff that somebody just played. And this is where my talent comes into play, because I'm good at spotting something in the state of seed that could become something really great. And so people respect that I have that as part of my talent box, and I will, in a matter of a couple of hours, I could take a little seed and turn it into something quite finished. And people appreciate that kind of an eye or an ear for innovation, to build something spontaneously. But back to the tuba.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ever gets that specific, because I wouldn't recommend a tuba if there's not a tuba player in the band. We try and make sure that we maximize house talent. So we have house sound, and what is house talent? The people who come in are the talent, and what is it that they have that's special about them? There might even be a hidden part of their talent that they don't know about yet, but that's where I pull out my crystal ball and take it out of them.
Do you think you or producers generally are underrated or undervalued for the influence that you can have on a song or an album?
I don't think I'm underrated. I feel blessed that I've been that I've worked with some of the greats. You know, I sat next to Bob Dylan for the making of a couple of albums, and for a small fry from Quebec to suddenly be sitting next to one of the master poets, lyricists of America, this is really something. I won't just show up for the party. I want to make sure that there's a reason for me to be there, and that my gift enters these people's world and music, and that they understand that my devotion is 1,000%, and I'm not just going to be a fly on the wall. I'll make sure that I want the very, very best for the people that I work with, and I think that's probably enough said on that. You know, that we philosophize, we talk about things, we recognize who we are, where we are, and how can we make the best record we can. Back to Bob Dylan for a second. First record I made with him was in New Orleans. I had just come off of making a record with the Neville Brothers called Yellow Moon. And Bob was on tour, and he stopped in on that session, and he recognized that we were on fire. There was something going on there that was very unorthodox, because we were not in a conventional studio. We had rented a house on St. Charles Avenue, and the Nevilles lived around the corner. And so we had managed to do something very unusual and special at a time when there was a lot of studioitis going around. A lot of records were sounding the same, and I didn't want Bob's record to sound like everyone else's record. I wanted Bob to have something special. So I said to him, meet me in the spring, and I'll have a house ready to roll, and you don't even need to bring any instruments or musicians or anything. You just show up, and I'll have everything ready for you, my friend.
Do you only work with bands and artists that you want to work with? By that I mean, if you don't like the music of an act or an artist, and they are sent to you by a record label or whatever, will you actually turn down that opportunity, or will you take it as an opportunity to try to influence their music and make it more to your liking?
Well, first of all, I operate by invitation. I've never really hustled for work. So if an invitation comes, then I make an assessment based on what I think I could add, what contribution could I make to this person. And I've said no a few times when I shouldn't have. If I could wind the clock back, I would do that first Sinead O'Connor record I was asked to do when I was in Dublin, for example. But Sinead and I are friends, so we've done some other things together. But if I feel I can make a contribution, and and I believe in the artist, then that's enough for me to go on. That happened with me and Emmylou Harris. I always loved her voice, and I was invited to make a record with her. I met her in Nashville, and I liked her right away, and I thought that we could do something special together. She was looking to do something different than she had done before, and I was ready to rise to the request. You know, just what else could happen for Emmylou Harris? Where else could we take her music, that beautiful voice? And I think we got someplace, to a special place. Yeah, it's really an intuition. We operate by intuition, largely.
That raises another issue. If an orchestra, the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, came to you and said, we hear you're a really good producer, we want to do a new recording of Mozart or Stravinsky, is that something that you would feel that you, as a technical and efficient producer, could do? Or would you say, no, I don't touch classical music, I couldn't do that job for you?
Absolutely. I've recorded orchestras and choirs, and I've done some of that along the way, yes. I'm not known for that, but I can remember having a full orchestra in my studio in Hamilton. It was a very small place. I can't believe we had a 40-piece orchestra in there. It was ridiculous. But I love all kind of sources of music, and I am a fan of some classical music, of course. I record a lot of jazz. In Hamilton, we recorded a lot of jazz for the CBC back in the day. I really enjoyed those sessions because they happened quickly. Usually a 2-day session. A lot of it was direct to 2 tracks, so you'd be recording and mixing at the same time. It was really quite something very special. I remember some of the greats from Toronto at the time. I was hanging out with Dave Pilch for a while. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a great bass player from Toronto. And we recorded a lot of jazz records together.
Of all the albums you've produced, what are some of your favorites?
I heard the U2 Achtung Baby record not too long ago. I was at somebody's house and I happened to have it on, and I was really able to appreciate the power of the rhythm section and the adventurous lyrics and toppings and melodies. And I thought that was quite an accomplishment to serve the bedrock of rock and roll, but to take the sentiments and the lyrics and the melodies to a futuristic place.
Are there any albums that you've produced that you've actually not liked or even hated? And when you hear them now, you can tell that you didn't really like doing it and it maybe wasn't your best work?
No, I never carry on with something if it doesn't feel right, and sometimes it's best to walk away than to do something half-baked. But I've been pretty lucky that way. I enjoy all the work that I've done on some level or other. Some of it sounds like it belongs to a specific time, you know, maybe has a bit of an 80s feel. But there is charm in that because if you take a proper snapshot of something that's going on at the time, it will have innocence built in it. So I appreciate the innocence of a lot of my past work.
Do you ever listen to any of your past work or hear it, you know, on the car radio as you're driving into work and think, you know, maybe 3 years later, 10 years later, gosh, I wish I'd put the cowbell or the tuba into that section of the music, but we didn't, but God, I'd almost like to redo it?
I never have those thoughts. I never have regrets about approach. And I think we managed to sidestep those regrets by just getting it to a special place to begin with. And I think That's the most important thing. If something sounds like it has some magic in it, then all's forgiven stylistically.
What was the worst experience that you've ever had on a project? I don't expect you're going to name names, but have there been some along the way that have just been really like pulling teeth, or just the chemistry wasn't there? And if so, did you complete the job, or you kind of alluded to maybe you would just walk away?
I think most of my problems have been technical. You know, I can remember making a U2 record by the River Boyne, and we were powering our equipment with river power, so they had a turbine in the river. And sometimes we'd be down to 92 volts, and we were just praying the tape recorder could keep up. But I've never had, I've never walked away from anything because, you know, it wasn't happening for any reason. You know, we override, you know, if there's any complications, we just barrel through those problems. And then if there's respect fundamentally with the people I'm working with, then the respect will override any kind of concerns.
Daniel, the delivery of music, of the physical product, has changed radically, obviously, in the last 50 years. When you were first starting out, it was all vinyl, and then there was 8-track and cassettes, and then CDs and DVDs. Do you believe that the production quality, as exhibited in the physical product, is better today than it was 50 years ago?
Some things are better today than they were a long time ago. We are currently using a digital multi-track recorder, and we can make a copy of a multi-track with the push of one button. That used to be a complicated process of bringing in another 2-inch machine, and you make an analog tape copy, and some of the sounds may not survive the process so well. So I don't miss that part of things. And I think a lot of the urban records, let's call them, are very, very high fidelity, and people are doing things that we never did before. I suppose if there's a criticism, or something that I missed rather, from back in the day, is it seemed to be a little more air around the sounds. So and people reference Led Zeppelin records to this day because they have that in them. You really feel the presence of people, you feel the depth of field, somebody standing a little further back than the front character and so on. But the record I made with Dylan called Time Out of Mind has that in it. It has a lot of depth because we were in a big room with a lot of people. And it's one of the things that one of the tonalities that I'm proud of on that record. So if you have that kind of an ear and you understand that there is depth to be had in sound and it's not just a photographic term, you can keep making adjustments as you go along. And if you think of it like a painting, you know, it's okay that something might be in the shadows and your front character is more brightly lit and so on. I don't like hearing records where everything's on the same plane. I don't think that's so good. So I think we as humans, we like the idea that there's something lurking in the bushes.
You know, you mentioned the word painting, and I often wonder whether a music producer isn't somewhat like a painter. And, you know, a painter finishes the last stroke with his brush and says, okay, it's done. How do you know, or how do you feel when a song is done?
Certain things feel done. I'm working with Wayne Lorenz. He's also from Toronto. And we have a few mixes on the go right now, the songs that will make the finish line to my next record. And the mixes are done. We don't question anything about them. We love them. Other ones are never reached that position. Other ones we're pushing and pulling a little bit more. But that's okay. You know, it's okay to question and keep going after something because we've done that a lot and gotten to a better place. So if we're lucky enough to get one that is perfect, then let it be. But some other ones are, you have to keep experimenting with them, and then you might find by stripping, what we have, the advantage we have over painters is the paint never dries. We can just peel it away. It's more of an onion skin process. So, you know, we could strip things back down, especially with this modern equipment. Is anything ever really done? Yep. Some things are ready to go out, and we put them out, and we feel confident.
Well, I admire your ability to have that finality. You mentioned Wayne, who is from Toronto. You're from Hamilton. Bob Ezrin from Toronto, you mentioned earlier. Has being Canadian for you informed or influenced your work in any way?
I think Canadians are curious by nature. Robbie Robertson, a hero of mine, a generation ahead of me, from Hagersville, which is near Hamilton. He was very courageous as a trailblazer and went south to be in the environment of the music that he loved and grew up with. You might say that I followed in Robbie's footsteps by going to New Orleans, because I wanted to be in that town where Little Richard had recorded, and Louis Armstrong, and you know, it never ends, the list. And so to be in the environment is probably one of the greatest teachers, and it all leads to doing better work. So as a Canadian, we never had that kind of culture in Canada. You know, we had great poets and a lot of great folk musicians, and but the grooves that I was interested in, they lived in the South, so I decided to go south. So we are curious as Canadians.
You've won 7 Grammy Awards, you've won a Juno Award, you've got a star on Canada's Walk of Fame here in Toronto, and you were appointed a member of the Order of Canada in 2018, among many honors and accolades. What's your proudest achievement?
It's nice to be recognized, and because that provides encouragement to carry on. And I feel that my greatest achievement is always ahead of me, has yet to come, because with encouragement and curiosity intact, and an appetite to head to the unknown sonically, that combination, those 3 ingredients really keep us going. And we don't look back. I mean, if I go on a date, I might walk by the sidewalk and say, "Hey, look, somebody put a star and my name on it." In Toronto, on King Street, I think it is. But awards are just awards, and we strive to do the best work we can. Let me explain something to you. We all came up with heroes, you know, like I love Jimi Hendrix as a guitar player. I love Robbie Robertson as a guitar player. But I'm not Robbie or Jimmy. And so when I'm making a record, I don't try and sound like those guys. I respect that they inspired me, and then we have a responsibility to sidestep any mimic, and then we have a responsibility to take things to the future. So anything at all that I bump into the studio with Wayne Lorenz, we get very excited if we hit on something that's never been done before. We think that's the way to go. And so if we could get to that, then that's the achievement that I prefer, rather than a star on the sidewalk.
All right, last question, one I ask all my guests on Canada Files. Pretty simple, and you've partially answered it, but you might have some other thoughts. What does being Canadian mean to you?
I feel very fortunate that I came up in Canada. Wayne and I talk about this all the time, that what would it have been like if we, were in Africa in some place riddled with problems. And so I thank the lucky stars, my lucky stars, that I was able to grow up in a place that where I had advantages, and I was able to buy equipment. I didn't come up with wealth or anything like that. My mom was a single mom, struggled and all that. But how bad was the struggle? Not that bad. She loved us, we loved her, and I was able to build a recording studio in her house and get on with all that. And it's nice to go back to Canada. Maybe not right now. We'll wait for the thaw to come, and then we'll see you up there, Jim.
Daniel Lanois, thanks so much. Great answers and very nice to be with you.
Thank you, Jim. And maybe the next one we'll do it, me and Robbie. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Maybe we'll get Ezrin in there with the Three Stooges.
That would be awesome. And thank you for watching. We appreciate your support of Canada Files, and we'll see you again on the next edition.
The preceding program was made possible through the generous support of Ted and Alice Kernahan, as well as the following donors: Akito Investments Inc., the Browning Watt Foundation, Mary Davey, John and Margaret Deeks, Wendy Deeks, Michael and Mary Ellen Hogan, David and Cheryl Carr, Philip B. Lind, the Bruce H. Mitchell Foundation, the North Pine Foundation, Francis and Eleanor Shen, the 63 Foundation, and by the Central Canadian Public Television Association.